All right, hello, wine drinking people. It's time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday and where I've been drinking it. Oh, is that a new segment of the show? Well, hey, I was just out in Washington a couple of weeks ago for the Washington State Wine Auction. I figured, man, I should report back to you, my wine drinking people, on the progress that they've made out in Washington State. And I'm happy to say that I got a lovely tour of the Seattle area from Chardonnay Ray, who now lives out there. Actually, Ray was stationed out there in the late 1960s in the Navy, and you couldn't find a better person to tour you around this area. He knew, the history of the Seattle and the surrounding areas better than probably anybody that lives out there today. And he was a former sailor, so he sailed the Puget Sound and Lake Washington, and took me down to the locks, something that I had never seen before. We had so the first day I spent pretty much getting a history lesson from our good friend Chardonnay Ray, and well, you know that we had some great wines that first night, man. The 2001 Paul Meyer Napa Chardonnay, drinking perfect. And then 1998 Woodward Canyon, a great start. And I saw Rick Small the next day, so I could brag to him about how great his 98 Artist Series was drinking. The 2002 Domaine Serene Monogram Pinot, which I'd never had before. And then, of course, when good friends get together, a lot of bottles are going to go down. We finished off the night with a 1994 Fonseca 100-point pouring. And, hey, Deb helped us out a little bit, but it was pretty much just me and Ray with most of those 4 bottles. What a great first evening. Thanks you very much for having me over to your home, Ray and Deb, and giving me all the wonderful little tidbits of knowledge that I've included here for you, our wine-drinking people, about Seattle having the highest DRI rate in the country. Actually, it's not Seattle, but the Pacific Northwest has led the way in that category for a long time. Wisconsin now holds the title, and the most DUIs, or I don't know how you would measure that, the most percentage per population or what, but a very gloomy place. I just happened to be there on 2 of the most perfect days of the year, 95 degrees, sunny, not a cloud in the sky, so no reason to commit suicide or even think about that, although there's a very high rate suicide rate here because I guess of the gloomy, kind of drizzly, dreary weather. But anyways, the picnic and barrel auction was the next day, and man, what incredible setting Chateau Ste. Michelle is. This beautiful chateau-styled winery with impeccably kept grounds, and they've got a lovely stage out there where they have rock concerts and, of course, wine tastings, and like we had this night. And the barrel tasting was an interesting barrel tasting because they weren't auctioning off barrels, but you did get a top of the barrel if you won the bid on 1 case of each of the wines that were being tasted in the inner circle. And, man, you had some great wines down there. We had Rick Small was there from Woodward Canyon, as I mentioned before. I was bragging to him. We had Chris Figgins from Figgins Family Wines, Leonetti Cellars, one of the most sought-after labels coming out of Washington State, which there was no Leonetti there, but there was Figgins. And we did have Leonetti the next night at the auction. And then double back, Drew Bledsoe's new label, although Drew wasn't there. Damon Heward was there, another Washington State University alumni, played for the Dolphins here for a couple years. And Damon also getting into wine, possibly a label coming out in the next year or so. But the stuff on the inner circle, Charles Smith was there. This is what these guys were auctioning off. Chris Upchurch from DeLille. One of the great things about the auction is all these guys were there, man. They were into it. You could shake their hands, talk to them, and very accessible, and seemed like they really wanted to see what you thought about their wine. So the barrel auction was going on, and all these other tables on the outside perimeter had local restaurants were serving food, and just hundreds of wines on the table. And I bid on this Corliss wine, which I was unfamiliar with. One of the best wines I had this whole weekend, the 2009, and I think I had $700 on my tag. And what they do is they put yours up, and there's 5 of these wooden box tops on the thing, and as you put yours in, the lowest bid falls off. So, man, I had this case of Corliss, which is like a $70, $80 wine, up until the very last minutes of the auction. Someone came up and bumped me off right before the end, but I really don't need any more wine. We have 20,000 bottles in the store anyways, but that was something I wanted to come home and write about because that was killer, as was the Hedges Red Mountain at that tasting. 2009 looks like a great vintage from Washington State, really ripe and forward and approachable, and that's one of the hallmarks of Washington State wines. You don't get a lot of wines with these dry, dusty tannins that need years and years of aging to shed that. A lot of the wines are very sweet, very seductive, really ripe and jammy, right on release, especially, like I said, this 2009 vintage, and the Hedges 2009 Red Mountain, outstanding, one of my favorite appellations in Napa, and right from the barrel auction to the Red Mountain tasting we went, because we didn't have reservations at the Herb Farm, which is the most It's like the French Laundry of Woodinville, which is where Chateau Ste. Michelle is located. But, hey, man, I love Red Mountain, and we got to taste some cool stuff there. Betts family was there with some of their wines. And Col Solari, of course, 2006 and 2007, even though it's not all from Red Mountain. That's where they built the winery. They're really one of the leaders, flag bearers now for Red Mountain. And then Portrait Cellar. So a big day, our first day at the auction. A lot of tastings and a lot of wines, a lot of great wines were had. And then the next day, the chairman's dinner. This was another perfect day, 95 degrees, hot. And we had a tasting that morning with Long Shadows, which thank God that we got our wires crossed, because Long Shadows, their tasting room Woodinville doesn't open up until 12 o'clock, because Mark Ryan's tasting room was right there. And this is the first time I got to taste Mark Ryan's wines. Some really exciting stuff. And, he's buying some fruit. He does have some of his own vineyards that he's planted and he's developing. But a lot of people in Washington are buying fruit. They don't have their own vineyards. There's a lot of growers there that don't make their own wine. So you can find a lot of great fruit still. The Viognier from Columbia Valley, a drier style of Viognier, really nice. The Vincent, the red from Columbia Valley, really forward and seductive red. The Dissident, Cabernet Syrah and Merlot blend, really big and fruity with a little bit of wild game and black licorice spice. The Wild-Eyed Syrah from Red Mountain. One of the things that I came back thirsting for is Washington State Syrah. They make some great Syrahs in Washington State. And then the Dead Horse Red Mountain wine, little Lost Soul Syrah, the Ghost of 413. Everything I had with Mark Ryan was excellent. And, we're going to have whatever's available from him on this offering priced out. I don't know how many of these wines I tasted are in the market yet. Long Shadows was up next, and this is Alan Shoup. He has put together this portfolio of wines from Washington State with winemakers from around the world. So an incredible lineup of different wines, and each wine highlights the producer, their skills, like, for instance, the Poet's Leap Riesling. This is Armin Diehl, who's the winemaker and proprietor of Schlossgut Diehl in Germany. Jawohl, who you're going to bring in to make the Riesling? You need the Germans. So he's got a German producer there. The Saggi's brought the Folinari family in for the Sangiovese blend. The Feathered, Randy Dunn, of course, for that. The Pirouette, which is Philippe Melka and Augustin Huneas. Chestekitta, which is, this is the winemaker for Long Shadows, who makes this wine, Gauls Nicot. And then we got the Pedestal, my favorite wine in this lineup, which is Michel Roland, the Merlot blend, 81% Merlot. The Sequel Syrah from John Duval, outstanding. Former winemaker for Grange. Alan, you were a genius, buddy. All right, some great stuff was had there. And then the chairman's dinner that night. That's right, we keep on drinking here at the Wine Watch, man. We don't stop. That way you don't get a hangover. This was where we had Alan Galitzin, the owner of Kilseda Creek, Richard Betts from Betts family, Rick Small was there from Woodward Canyon, and Ted Bassler, the CEO for Chateau Ste. Michelle, who hosted hosted the events, most of the events. And man, what a great dinner. We had the great Tom Douglas, one of the top culinary minds from this part of, from Seattle, cooked our dinner himself for us on this barge behind this beautiful home. And what an incredible meal for 100 people to think that not only they put out that kind of food, but on a barge. Incredible. Everything was cooked perfectly. The squab was amazing. The first pass-arounds were a little small, but I mean, you get started slowly. And the Domaine Ste. Michelle Lux, or the Chateau Ste. Michelle Lux sparkling wine, it was one of the few things, man, I couldn't finish a whole glass of all night. But the Delisle Cellars Doyen Roussan was absolutely outstanding, 2001. And the little chanterelles, roasted chanterelles on the sea stack on the crostini were just fantastic, as was the foie gras toast with the tuna essence. And then the first course, another perfect pairing here, the sweet corn soup with a buttered popcorn garnish with a Eroica Riesling just went magically. The only problem is, by the time people got their soup, those 3 ounces of Riesling were gone. And one of the major faux pas you have with food and wine events is you want people to have the food with the wine, and if the wine's gone, and they had a team of sommeliers to service this, and they needed them because they had to reset the glassware after the second course, and they had to bring out 2 sets of 3. And you know what happens when you're doing an event like this and you're servicing food and wine, you want them to go together. Almost everybody's first 3 glasses came off with like half of what was poured in them. And this is Kilseda Creek Galitzin Vineyard, DeLille, their Grand Ciel, and the Chateau Ste. Michelle Ethos Cabernet, which I had not had these Ethos wines from Chateau Ste. Michelle before this journey. I have to say, one of the surprises of the night, just fantastic. The 08 Ethos, and maybe about half the price of the Kilseda Creek or more than that. The DeLille Cellars Grand Ciel, also excellent, but these wines, very expensive. Chateau Ste. Michelle offers some of the best wines in Washington State at some of the best values. When we look at the price of these Ethos wines, well, we've got them at about half price, the Syrah and the Merlot on this offering. Just incredible wines for $27. Are you kidding me? Well, they're regularly $50, and they're worth it at that price. Then the next flight, which, well, I didn't have to worry about that. I finished most of my wines, but they still did get some of my Kilseda Creek on the first flight and the DeLille. But the Betts Family La Perrin, this is a wine that's only been made once. It's an equal blend of a third Cabernet Merlot and Cabernet Franc. Outstanding. I was so pissed that the next night that I did not get that Magnum that was in the silent auction because somebody just came by and bought it for $250. They didn't even bother bidding on it. They just bought it, which is what I wanted to do. So one thing I wanted from that auction. Beautiful wine from Betts Cellars. The only time he's ever made it was a beautiful etched Magnum and just killer wine. Kilseda Creek, the 2006 Columbia Valley, and the Woodward Canyon Special Selection. And, I didn't say too much about the Kilseda Creek wines. They're great. They've got 100 points. I don't know how many times. They sell for over $150. They're fantastic wines. The Woodward Canyon Special Selection was wine of the night. Just killer wine. I don't know what it costs, but we'll have the Woodward Canyon wines that are available on this offer. It was absolutely outstanding. Just thick, super ripe and concentrated with just layers of dark currant and cassis-berry fruit, espresso spice, and dark earth components. The Grand Auction Dinner. Wow, we get to sit with Chris Figgins. So we had Leonetti on our table. We had Figgins Cellars. We had all kinds of guys walking up to us and offering us their wines. Just an incredible experience, the Chairman's Auction Dinner. You can buy stuff here. It reminds me of Napa Valley 20 years ago for $1,000 at this silent auction or less. And I think stuff at the live auction was selling for just a couple $1,000, some of the lots. So, if you want an experience in wine country and you want to go to one of these, wine auction weekends for like $800 or $900, you get to attend all of the events and get to sit with some of the stars and owners of the top vineyards in Washington State. I highly recommend it. Anybody wants to come with me, I've already made my reservations for next year in August 15th. I believe it's the same week, like the mid part of August every year. But check it out. Everything that I had at the Washington State Wine Auction, and all these Washington State wines that are available right here at the Wine Watch. I'm your host, Andrew Lamposoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.